Talking about breaking old habits, and a lot of that process is even acknowledging that we're stuck in a habit. And I think one of the major challenges with that is you don't know what you don't know. And so a lot of this is not just finding techniques that work, but that first step, that acknowledgement of where you're at. I think a lot of people, myself included, can think of what's going on as normal. This is an everyday occurrence, whatever that might be, that habit. We could name a few. And that might be a relationship with somebody and the way they treat you, the way you allow yourself to be treated, letting people walk all over you on boundaries, but you've never actually formed a boundary. You've never stood up for yourself. It could be health habits. It could be eating. It could be some sort of cope that you have, an excuse that you make over and over again about something that just is the way that you've always known it to be. And so a lot of times we form those habits early on in our lives, and we rarely, if ever, reassess. If we don't have somebody in our lives modeling that behavior, that it's appropriate to take a step back, look at yourself from a high level, and start to reassess. Some people call that a hypocrite. Well, you changed. You're different. I call that using your brain. You're gaining context. You're pivoting. You're becoming a better man. There's a lot to that. Big topic.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and I think a couple things you pointed out, Eric, but the last one about people say that you changed or you're a hypocrite. Imagine being around people where you're actually improving your life, you're having growth, you're expanding your thinking, and you're doing things that benefit you, that are serving you well in your life, and people are trying to pull you back down, right? They're trying to point out like, "Oh man, you've changed your stance or your position, or you no longer think this, you said this a couple years ago." Think about just that negative energy that is trying to bring you down, hold you down, and stop you from growing. And then you accept it, right? You sort of say, maybe these people are right, or it makes you second guess or doubt yourself. To me, that's one big narrative behind this.
Yeah, let's break down how do you feel in that instance, and how do you think the other person feels, because this goes into some really bad negative feedback loop, right? So someone's holding you back. They're not really holding you back, they're just saying a thing. It's up to you to take that personally. It's up to you to cater to their belief system, right? So in your life, how have you felt when someone tries to hold you back? That probably results in some type of an emotional response, whether that's pushing back, standing up for yourself, anger, acceptance, getting them out of your life. There's all sorts of options there.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of options. So, like you said, you can get angry, and anger is going to be perceived by most people who are trying to manipulate you as very offensive to them, right? Obviously, how dare you get angry at me trying to manipulate you or make you feel
Yeah,
bad?
I'm just looking out for you. Meanwhile, they got their foot on your
Yes.
throat, right?
Yeah, and then it could also, like you said, it could make you apprehensive. It can make you pull back or isolate. It can make you question yourself, your validity. It can make you closed off, and then it could also make you a people pleaser, right? Wanting validation. So there's so many different parts to this. I truly believe that it's always worth examining where you're at in life, and obviously you can do this by yourself. You can self-reflect, you can try to understand more about your past, and you can really dive into some inner self-knowledge and self-work. All great, right? I highly recommend it. But there are things that you're ignorant to. We all, no man is free from being ignorant of things that he's doesn't know about, right? That's sort of the premise.
Yeah, I don't know what I
um,
don't know, right?
yeah, and then there's also things that we might not know or be aware of, but sometimes we feel it and we understand it a little bit and we fucking hate it. And it's those parts of us that we hate that always pull us back, because when there's something that is gnawing at the back of your mind and you don't address it, you don't face it, you don't try to understand it, or even you don't try to conquer it and overcome it, right? It just keeps chipping away, keeps chipping away. So in order to stop making assumptions, in order to stop holding on to things that do not serve your life in a better way, right? To me, it's always going back to truth. It's about speaking your truth. It's about being honest. It's about not worrying if somebody is going to judge you because you have a thought in your mind, right? Not being afraid or scared that if you show up 100% authentically, that you're going to be disassociated. People are not going to want to be around you. And once you let go of that, and then you can, whatever you can be obnoxious, you can be an asshole, you can be rude, you can be quiet, you can be calming, you can be peaceful, and the people around you, all of a sudden, you're like, nobody really cares. I'm free to be myself.
I'd say that's on the top of my easier said than done list. That's one of those things that could be, for me, that's been 2 years, 3 years of slowly easing in and doing little tiny experiments. And do I feel safe in this instance? And I found a lot of times I felt like I almost needed permission from the world. Think about how much society controls us, or the thoughts that we have, the perceived control. It doesn't actually control us, right? And that's the trap that I think a lot of people put themselves in. But they don't even see that they're the ones who put themselves in that by just accepting the world around them, right? So learning how to question maybe even reality, or what you perceive as reality, and getting down to the base level, which is what? We're back to truth again. And so for me, being around people who questioned the way that their relationships worked, the way that they worked, and the people around them, that was a very big first step. So just hanging around with the right types of people. Again, you hang around with people that drag everybody down, and you just want to hang out, get drunk, fall asleep, whatever it is, like the lowest possible path of existence, just existing to exist, right? Or you hang around with people who challenge each other, challenge themselves, are growth oriented. It's not for me that it was an easy path, but the consistency of the people that I hung around with, the books that were recommended to me that I read, starting to understand myself, it can really be summed up in some pretty simple statements like, what do I need? How do I feel? If I wanted something different in my life, what would that be? And so I ask really simple questions and start to define the path that I want to go down. I could share that with other people that, yeah, they put their foot back on my neck. I never really hung around with people like that, luckily in my life. However, learning to guide myself was a really big first step. But man, it's a whole lot easier, I'd say, when you've got trusted individuals around you. So there's a lot of different things I think we can do
Yeah.
to start to break away from that. Because yes, that ultimate goal is seeking truth in all things. And as disruptive as that may be, it really is the way, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And it's a hell of a path to go down. It's not necessarily the smoothest path.
Yeah, you said getting drunk and falling asleep, right? So this is the Fraternity of Excellence. There's no Diddy parties here. There's no pink cocaine. Um, when we party, it's usually death-defying stunts and really uncomfortable conversations. That's how we get down inside FOE. That's how we push men to be better. Um, but I wanted to hit. You said something about trust, and I think trust is just as important as truth, right? TNT. You have to have truth and you have to have trust. I think both of those are two great pillars of prosperity. They're pillars of real connection, of men understanding that when you trust another man, what that looks like, what that feels like, and how that's going to show up in your life. So I think to me, it's first recognizing like what isn't truth or what is not trust. So, and this is something I bring this back to parenting. It's if we can understand principles to raise kids that are going to help them grow into um, better people, have a stronger character, a stronger foundation of who they are, then they will not be they won't tolerate this crap in their life. So going back to trust, if you said being around people who hold you accountable, who are honest with you, truthful, you need trust. And men who do not trust themselves are men who are going to show up in ways not just lacking energy or lacking discipline, right? You can be overweight, you can be poor, you can be whatever, right? Whatever negative connotation we want to attach to it. But they can also be victims. They can excel at one thing and they can be very poorly living in other areas of their life. So, and I bring this up because I think it's very important to go back to that space of personal integrity,
Hmm.
of looking at areas of our life and being honest about where we lack, about where we're weak, where we're not strong, where we're not working on. And to me, that always goes back to it. So if me or you were to sit down and you can be like, oh, you know what, I've made millions of dollars and I'm jacked and fit. I got a six pack, and nobody's addressing, well, why do you have bad self esteem? Why do you think so poorly of yourself? Why are you always talking down and self deprecating? Right? If you don't address that, if somebody's not pointing that out, there's going to be no trust because everybody's just living off this fantasy or this illusion that you're showing them. Nobody wants to face the reality. They want to just be like, oh, look how fucking cool Eric is.
Yeah, and why is that? It's because being a victim, I get to blame other people when something didn't work. Being a victim, I get to blame that false image of whoever I'm thinking about who's gonna guaranteed say that thing that I don't want to hear. I feel like I've lived that 1,000 times. I'm not even going to bother bringing it up. This is part of my story.
Yeah, man. No, it's
Right.
good. Living that 1,000 times sounds painful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, breaking that habit, it's like, well, what if? And making that realization that I didn't trust myself. That was probably the biggest flip in my head was when I started to trust myself. It removed that sense of victimhood, which wasn't something I wore outwardly. I didn't walk around proclaiming my victimhood and how oppressed I was. I kind of looked down on people who acted like victims. And yet I found that inside there were a lot of wounds that went really deep that I buried in every possible way. And that might have been fitness, that might have been success, that might have been focusing on business instead of family, whatever that may be. But at the end of the day, it's up to me to self validate. That was probably one of the more difficult things to do, but that came from trust in myself and it all fell into place. Tell a man, hey, start validating yourself tomorrow. And it's like, what do I even do? What is that? How does that even make sense? And this is a slower process, just building up that trust and confidence. And you do that by telling the truth to people. And more often than not, the fantasy in our heads is a lot more dangerous and degrading and keeps us backed in that corner more than the outcome of telling the truth to other people. Because if you hang out with good people, they're going to relate to you. They're going to understand. They're going to be on your side for the most part. If you're hanging out with garbage people, well, that's what a great sign to move on and find other people to hang out with.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you hang out with good people, it's not always going to be comfortable
No, this
because
isn't about comfort.
there's going to be growth. Now, I think about, and I really want to try to break down this topic or this point, so a lot of men understand it, that who we have around us is highly important. The like you were saying before, if you look around at your circle and you see that there's men who are negative, men who are victims, there's a good chance that you possess those qualities right there within you, and you're projecting, you're seeing in others. But imagine if you started moving away from the lies, telling the truth more, and then as you grow, as you become a better man, as you become a person, you're working on having or acquiring virtue in your life, living with these principles that are going to ultimately push you to greater heights.
Mhm.
And then you start being around people who practice the same.
So that's what we do in here. We hold each other accountable. We learn to hold ourselves accountable. And we really, really embody that growth mindset, the seeking of truth. And it can sound overwhelming to a new guy who joins the group. There's a lot of distractions going on in life. It feels like you're putting out 20, 30 different fires. You feel like you need answers to every little thing, seeking a lot of help in a lot of directions. It can be a very reactive state. But the end goal and the end process, again, it's not a finite ending to the story. It's more of a way of being. It's a more of way of being present in the moment. Is the state of holding myself accountable, saying the thing that I mean to say in the moment, and really digging down to how do I feel? What is my truth? If I could say anything, what am I going to say? And then just saying it and trusting myself along that path. That to me is what it is to hang around with the right type of men. And people who hold me down, people who don't hold me accountable for the things that I say, that's not the type of life that I want to live. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, but I became a little bit addicted to the uncomfortableness, right? I don't mind being uncomfortable because I know that the greater good is involved. That's how I win. That's how I excel in my life.
Yeah, no, I like it. And that's part of it, right? You said you become addicted to being uncomfortable. To me, that's because you've grown stronger. So being uncomfortable has no power over you. And I think that being inside of FOE, what one of the main things that I've learned is the more that I spoke up, the more that I said my truth, the less that I held on to fear, the more that I understood there were other men who wanted exactly what I wanted. They wanted to be free. They wanted to let go of the past and they wanted to develop strength. And
Mhm.
that's not just physical strength, it's emotional, it's mental strength. And because when you start tying in all these powers together, you become a badass motherfucker. You become somebody who is more confident, somebody who's willing to say what they mean. You stop holding things in. And we all know, man, the more stuff that you hold in and you suppress and you try to push down, the weaker and sicker you become. Not just your body, you don't just get, the flu. Your mind becomes polluted. You have poison running through your veins. That's what I'm looking, and I think that's what we're trying to do here inside FOE
Yeah.
is help men extract that poison from their fucking blood.